Before we dive into today's story, if this is your first time watching one of our videos, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us and helps us bring you even more powerful stories. Stick with us till the very end. And if this story moves you, share your thoughts in the comments and send it to a friend who needs to hear it. Now, let's begin. Elara Quinn, 28 years old, limped into the Denver courthouse, the sharp echo of her crutches striking against the polished marble floor like a battle drum. Every step sent waves of pain up her injured leg, but her chin stayed high. Her eyes swept across the courtroom and landed on the front row, her family. They sat smugly, dressed in pressed suits, their faces alight with the arrogance of people who thought they had already won. But the instant their gazes met hers, the smugness cracked. Her father, Gerald Quinn, shot to his feet, his face draining of all color. "Oh, my God," he stammered, his finger trembling as he pointed toward her. It's her." Gasps swept across the room. Whispers spread like wildfire. They had believed she would never rise again. They thought the coma had buried her future forever. Yet there she was, scarred, fragile, but stronger than she had ever been. Her heart thundered against her ribs, but Elara forced her breathing steady. What hurt more than the stabbing ache in her leg was the memory of betrayal. She could still see herself in that hospital bed, tubes tethered to her veins, machines keeping track of her fragile breaths. She remembered hearing through a haze that her family never came, not once. No flowers, no prayers, no gentle touch from her mother. Instead, they had been busy preparing to strip her of everything she had built. They wanted her $10 million contract, her groundbreaking algorithm, her entire life's work. She had dreamed of her family sharing her triumph. Instead, they had tried to bury her while she still breathed. That thought alone steadied her hands now as she took her seat beside her attorney. Months earlier, she had walked out of a glass tower in downtown Denver with tears of triumph filling her eyes. In her trembling hands was the contract of a lifetime, $10 million secured for her medical diagnostic algorithm. Her vision, something she had labored over for years, was about to transform healthcare. She remembered pressing the papers to her chest, her laughter bubbling uncontrollably as she whispered to herself, "I did it." That night, she had driven home with excitement flooding her veins. She pictured her father clapping her on the shoulder, her mother embracing her, and her older sister, Celine, cheering at last instead of criticizing. Elara pushed open the kitchen door, her smile bright, and held up the papers. "I did it," she announced breathlessly. $10 million for my algorithm." But instead of pride, she was met with cold disdain. Celine Quinn, polished and always sharp-tongued at 32, sat at the table with a wine glass in her hand and a smirk curling her lips. She didn't look impressed. Her eyes narrowed as though Elara's joy was an insult. "Your algorithm." Celine scoffed, her voice dripping with venom. "You mean the project I managed? The one I pushed through every boardroom?" Elara blinked, stunned. "Celine, it's my code. My sleepless nights. My creation." She tried to laugh, to break the tension, but Celine stood abruptly, her chair screeching across the hardwood floor. Her voice rose, low and dangerous. "You think you're better than me, don't you?" she hissed. Elara stepped back, her hands trembling. "This isn't about you, it's about what I built. Why can't you just be happy for me?" But Celine's eyes flashed like daggers. The air grew tight as their voices clashed and their argument carried up the staircase, one bitter word at a time. At the top of the stairs, Celine's rage boiled over. Her words were sharp, cruel, and final. "You're nothing without me," she spat. Then, in a sudden motion, she shoved Elara's shoulders with a force born of years of jealousy. Elara's foot slipped. The world spun violently as her body crashed against the wooden steps, her head slamming hard, her leg twisting at an unnatural angle. Pain burst like fire through her veins before everything went black. When she opened her eyes again, sterile white walls surrounded her and machines beeped steadily at her side. She couldn't move, couldn't speak, only listen as strangers murmured about her condition. Somewhere inside the fog of unconsciousness, she thought, they'll come. My family will come for me. But when she finally woke 2 weeks later, the truth shattered her heart. They never had. The first face Alara saw after waking was not her mother's or her father's, but a nurse with kind eyes who smiled in relief. "You're awake," the woman whispered gently, checking the monitors. Alara's throat felt raw as she croaked. "How long?" The nurse hesitated, her hand stilling on the clipboard. Finally, she said, 2 weeks. You've been in a coma for 2 weeks. Alara's chest tightened. "My family, did they come?" she asked, clinging to hope. The nurse's face softened, but her silence stretched like a blade. Then she sighed. "Your parents called once early on, but no one visited. I'm sorry." Alara turned her face to the wall, hot tears sliding down. 2 weeks in the dark, and not a single hand had held hers. She whispered, "They said nothing?" The nurse swallowed hard before replying. "They told the staff you brought this on yourself, that you shamed them." Those words pierced deeper than her wounds. She had given her life to make them proud, and all they offered was shame. Days passed in a heavy blur. Nurses drifted in and out, offering food, medicine, or a brief smile, but the emptiness lingered. Her mind replayed the fall again and again, the sound of Celine's hiss, the force of the shove, the crash of her body down the stairs. One afternoon, the door opened and Celine herself entered. Arms crossed, eyes glittering with cruelty, she leaned against the wall. "Still clinging to life, huh?" she sneered. Alara forced herself to sit up despite the pain. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice low, sharp. Celine smirked and stepped closer, whispering, "Just making sure you don't get in my way again. The world doesn't wait for the weak." Then she turned on her heel and walked out, her heels echoing like gunshots down the corridor. Alara's fists clenched around the bedsheet. Her sister's cruelty was no longer casual, it was calculated. Celine wasn't simply mocking her. She was hiding something, guarding something. The truth came days later when her best friend, Amira Lane, pushed quietly into the room. Amira's face was pale, her eyes rimmed red as she rushed to Alara's side. "I've been fighting to see you," she whispered fiercely. "They wouldn't let me in before." Alara grabbed her hand, tears welling. "You came," she breathed, relief flooding her. "I thought I was alone." Amira squeezed her hand tightly. "You're not, but you need to know the truth." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Celine has been telling everyone at your company that she's taking over your contract. She's claiming your algorithm was hers from the beginning." Alara's stomach lurched. "No," she gasped. "That's impossible. Everyone knows I built it." Amira shook her head. "She's convincing them, Alara. She's already presenting herself as the savior who stepped in when you fell." Alara's jaw tightened, rage sparking through her exhaustion. "She's trying to erase me," she whispered. Her eyes burned with a new fire, but I won't let her. That night, determined to fight, Alara reached for her phone. Pain shot through her leg, but she gritted her teeth and logged into her bank app. Her heart sank instantly. Across the glowing screen flashed the words, "Account frozen." Panic clawed at her chest. She called the bank in desperation. "There must be a mistake," she pleaded. The representative on the line explained in a practiced tone, "There is a court order citing concerns about your ability to manage funds due to medical incapacity." Alara's blood turned to ice. "Medical incapacity? I'm awake. I'm here. Who filed this?" The representative couldn't answer, but she already knew. Celine. It had her sister's fingerprints all over it. That night, Alara lay awake, staring at the ceiling, vowing silently, "If she thinks she can erase me, she doesn't know how strong I've become." The next morning, A tall man in his 30s walked into her hospital room with a leather folder under his arm. His expression was sharp, confident, and controlled. "Elara Quinn?" he asked, extending his hand. "I'm Nathan Cole, your attorney. A colleague at your company suspected foul play and asked me to investigate." Elara's voice trembled. "Foul play is an understatement." Nathan laid the folder on her lap. Inside were documents that made her skin crawl. "These papers claim you are medically incapacitated," he explained, "and transfer all rights, including your $10 million contract, to another party." He pointed to the bottom of a page. "And here is your supposed signature." Elara stared, her breath catching. "That's not mine," she whispered hoarsely. "She forged my name." Nathan's tone remained steady, but his eyes gleamed with determination. "Then we prove it. But we'll need more than suspicion. We need undeniable proof." Days later, Dr. Helena Price, the physician overseeing her recovery, stepped into Elara's room with a troubled expression. She carried a tablet, which she placed in Elara's hands. "I've reviewed your medical records," she said gravely. "They've been tampered with." Elara's pulse quickened. "Tampered?" The doctor nodded. "False entries were added suggesting you would never wake up. They were designed to make you appear permanently incapacitated." Elara's throat tightened. "So they wanted the world to believe I'd never recover." Dr. Price nodded firmly. "Yes, and I will testify. These weren't mistakes. These were deliberate alterations." Elara's chest burned with fury, but her voice was steady. "Thank you," she said. For the first time, she felt the tide shift. Someone was on her side. Someone was willing to stand against the lies. A week later, Elara arranged to meet Celine in a quiet Denver cafe. She slipped a recorder into her coat pocket, her hands trembling but her resolve strong. Celine walked in confidently, her hair styled perfectly, her lips curved in an arrogant smirk. "You're up," she mocked, sipping her coffee casually. "Didn't think you'd make it." Elara leaned forward, her voice calm but icy. "The contract, you mean my contract?" Celine chuckled coldly. "It's mine now. You weren't going to make it out of that hospital bed. The company needed someone strong." Elara forced a smile, though her blood boiled. The recorder in her pocket captured every poisonous word. As Celine strutted away, Elara whispered to herself, "Got you." Back in Nathan's office, she pressed play. Celine's arrogant confession filled the room. Nathan's eyes gleamed. "This is it," he said. "With this recording, Dr. Price's testimony, and the forged documents, her entire scheme collapses." The courtroom buzzed with electricity on the day of the trial. Elara sat beside Nathan, her crutches leaning against the bench. She clasped her trembling hands together, willing her heart to stay steady. Across the room, Celine sat rigid, her chin raised, though her eyes betrayed nervous flickers. "Judge!" Carmichael entered, and the room hushed. Nathan rose first, his voice calm yet commanding. "Your Honor," he began, "we present undeniable evidence of fraud and conspiracy against my client, Elara Quinn." He pressed play on the recorder. Celine's smug voice echoed through the chamber. "It's mine now." Gasps filled the room. Celine's face drained of color, her composure slipping. Nathan laid the forged documents on the judge's desk. "This is not my client's signature," he said firmly. "This was fraud designed to steal a $10 million contract." Judge Carmichael's lips tightened, her eyes narrowing with anger. Witnesses came and went. Dr. Price testified with quiet strength, explaining how the records were deliberately falsified. A nervous colleague named Martin Hale admitted under oath that Celine had paid him to rewrite company documents. "I thought it was harmless," he stammered, avoiding Elara's eyes. "I didn't know it would go this far." The judge's tone was icy. "Fraud is fraud, Mr. Hale. Following orders does not absolve guilt." Finally, Elara herself stood on the witness stand, leaning on her crutches. Her voice, was steady despite the ache in her body. "I built that algorithm," she declared. "Years of sleepless nights, coding, testing, perfecting. I was shoved down a staircase and left in a coma. My family abandoned me. My sister tried to erase me. But I am here, and I will not be erased." Her words thundered in the silence. For the first time, her parents, seated stiffly in the back, could not meet her eyes. Their silence condemned them more than any witness could. The courtroom air thickened as Judge Carmichael leaned back in her chair, her sharp eyes locked on Celine. "You forged legal documents, tampered with medical records, and attempted to claim work that was never yours. Do you deny these accusations?" Celine rose abruptly, her face pale, but her voice sharp. I was protecting the company," she cried. "Elara was unstable, unfit to lead such a monumental contract. Someone had to step in." Her words cracked like brittle glass, echoing in the hushed room. Nathan stood calmly, adjusting his glasses. "Protecting a company does not mean erasing your sister's identity," he countered. "It does not mean pushing her down a staircase, forging her signature, and convincing the world she would never wake again. This was not protection. This was theft. Calculated theft." A ripple of murmurs swept through the gallery, the audience shifting as Celine's defense shattered before their eyes. Martin Hale squirmed on the witness stand, his hands trembling as he confessed. She paid me to rewrite the documents. I thought it was just a formality, just cleaning up. I didn't realize it was fraud." His words faltered under the weight of the judge's glare. "Fraud is fraud, Mr. Hale," Judge Carmichael said firmly. "Your excuses do not absolve you. You aided in deception that nearly cost a woman her livelihood." Martin lowered his head, shame etched into every line of his face. Elara watched him, her stomach twisted, but she did not flinch. For years she had been underestimated, overshadowed, dismissed. Now, every word spoken in that courtroom carved out the truth she had waited for. She leaned slightly on her crutches, whispering under her breath, "They will finally see me." Nathan gave her a reassuring glance, as if to answer, "Yes, they will." When it was Elara's turn to return to the stand, silence settled like heavy snow. She placed her crutches carefully to the side, stood tall despite the pain radiating through her leg, and faced the jury. "I built this algorithm," she said, her voice steady. "Not with shortcuts, not with deceit, but with years of sleepless nights and unrelenting determination. My sister pushed me down a staircase, leaving me in a coma, and while I lay helpless, my family abandoned me. They did not pray, they did not hope. They plotted to erase me." She drew a deep breath, her gaze firm. "But I survived, and I am here to say I will not be erased, not by fraud, not by betrayal, not by silence." Her words cut through the stillness, leaving the gallery wide-eyed and hushed. Her parents shifted uncomfortably in their seats, unable to look at her, their silence heavy with shame. The judge recessed for deliberation. Minutes stretched into hours, each second grinding against Elara's nerves. She sat rigid, her hands clasped so tightly they trembled. Nathan leaned closer, whispering, "Breathe, Elara. We presented the truth. Now let the truth work." She nodded, though her heart raced. At the other table, Celine whispered furiously to her attorney, her mask of control slipping. For the first time, fear clouded her polished features. Elara closed her eyes, blocking it out, replaying Amira's words in her mind. "You're not alone." That truth was her anchor. When Judge Carmichael finally re-entered the room, the gallery straightened, the tension snapping taut like a wire. The judge's gavel struck once, sharp and final. "The evidence is overwhelming," she declared, her voice like steel. "This court finds Celine Quinn guilty of fraud, conspiracy, and falsification of medical records." The verdict landed like thunder. Celine's body seemed to fold in on itself, her face pale as stone. Judge Carmichael's tone was unyielding. For your crimes, Celine Quinn, you are sentenced to 4 years in prison. The gallery erupted in murmurs, shock and vindication mingling in the air. Celine turned toward her parents, her eyes wild, but they offered no defense, no comfort, only silence. The judge's gaze shifted next to Martin Hale. You aided this deception. You are sentenced to 2 years in prison and fined $20,000. Martin's shoulders slumped as he was led away, his eyes glued to the floor. Finally, the judge turned to Alara's parents, Gerald and Marion Quinn. Your silence, your complicity, your willingness to allow this fraud to stand, this court cannot ignore. You will face civil penalties for the damages caused. Gasps rippled again, and for the first time, Gerald's proud facade broke, his head bowing in shame. Alara exhaled, tears brimming in her eyes as she leaned against her crutches. The weight she had carried for years, the rejection, the betrayal, the shadow of being dismissed by her own family, finally lifted. Justice had come, not just for her contract, but for the dignity she had fought for her entire life. Weeks later, she moved into a small but bright apartment overlooking Denver skyline. The walls were bare, but they hummed with promise. Her contract was restored, her name cleared, her strength undeniable. Instead of clinging to the past, Alara invested part of her earnings into a foundation for victims of familial betrayal, offering legal aid, counseling, and safe housing. At its launch, she stood before the press and said simply, no one should fight alone. That night, gazing out at the glittering lights of the city, she whispered to herself, I survived. I won, and I no longer need their approval. For the first time, she felt free. Like and subscribe to my channel for more contents like this, and let us know where you are watching from under the comment section.